What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the electrical video of our barndominium house series. I want to start off this video by saying I am not an electrician, and I'm not going to show you everything I did in here for that reason, just because I'm not an electrician and I'm not liable for anything that you guys see in here and try that may or may not be correct. But I will say everything in here has been inspected and it has passed, so it is up to code. When we were doing our wiring, we really took our time and we read all the code and we just did things by the book, which I highly encourage any of you guys to do if you attempt to do your own electrical work. But if you're not familiar with it, just hire a professional. They'll have it done in a few days and you'll know for sure everything will be correct, and you can have some peace of mind that you're not going to have any arcs or anything in your walls, which would be really bad. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough on what we did in here, and I also am going to highlight a couple products that we've been using throughout the house build. To start with, I'm going to talk about our wafer lights. So in the past I've used can lights for pretty much everything I've done. It's really all I've ever known is the can lights, and I came across these when I was shopping one day and I was like, you know what, these might work really well, because as I've showed before, we have that plastic vapor barrier up on the attic and on the walls in here, and what I didn't want to have to do is cut holes in that plastic for every single can light that was going to go up there. And on top of that, those can lights are not rated for close contact with insulation. So this option allowed me to not have to puncture that plastic everywhere, and it's rated for close contact with insulation if it was in close contact. And I don't think there's a product out there that would have been a better option for what we're working with today. They were super easy to install, and I've got a couple temp lights up here. I didn't want to put all of them in, of course, because we got to hang drywall and we'd have to pull them all out anyways, but I did plug in a couple of them just to give me some light in here to work in the evenings and to see how well they light up. But these are full LED, and I think the brightness on them is 5000K. I believe there was a 6000K one that was a step up from that, but I went with the 5000K. My wife and I really like the white light versus the older, like that amber yellowish tone. And our house is going to be kind of a modern design when it's all finished, and I think this white light just kind of makes everything look more new and modern. But I'll give you a close-up here on how these are installed. Basically, it's a two-part system. You mount this box here, and it has a little tail on it, and then when you're ready to install the light, these two just link together and then screw in tight. And then on these actual lights, I went with these because they had a really good spring on them. I hope this will focus for you. There we go. So some of these lights are really cheap and the springs on them kind of stink, but these ones are nice. They flip up and then you can slide it into the hole in the drywall, and then they clamp down and hold it really tight up against the top of the drywall. They come with a plastic coating on them so they don't get scratched up or covered with any paint or anything. But here's that little tail that just plugs in, and then it's threaded so you can, there, you can kind of see it. There's just two barbs in there and it threads onto that box. And on the box side of it, the nice thing is they give you quite a bit of play with the tails that they have on there. I think it's a little over a foot total when you combine the two, which gives you some wiggle room up there. They just open up like this. I already pre-installed all these connectors, these quick connectors. They come in the box, but they're just not installed on the wire in case you don't need them or don't want to use them. But I would highly recommend them. They're so quick when you're wiring. You just slide in. They have the ports on the bottom. You just snap in the wire, and then you can see through once you get them all the way seated if they're all the way in or not. And there's some talk about, I think they call these Waco connectors. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. I know it starts with a W. And some people don't like them because they think that the wire could fall out of them. But I challenge anybody that says that to plug a wire into one of these and then try and get it out if you make a mistake, because I did have to, I made a mistake on one light and I ended up having to cut it off because I couldn't pull it out of there. So anybody that questions if these are good or not, my opinion on them, and I installed 60 plus in this house and garage, is that I really like them, and I would definitely use them again. I should say the brand on these one, I think it's Ensenior or Ensenior, and I got them on Amazon. I believe they're about $11 or $12 per light, which seems like a lot, and I will say the cost did add up, but when you're looking for a high quality light, it's kind of, you know, that ballpark range between the $12 to $13 range. And like I said, I wanted to get something a little bit higher quality so I don't have to worry about them sagging or falling down, and it's just going to leave a really clean look on our ceilings. So I don't know how well this will show through on camera, but I've got 4 in this small bedroom in the corner here, and it's more than enough to light up this space. They're really bright, and they're that really white color, which we are loving. And these I just used, like I said, I just hung these temporarily, and we just took a wire. I don't know if I'll be able to get that. We just took a piece of cable or wire, wrapped it around that stud, and then looped it through just so they could hang temporarily and light up the space for us. But I've got one there, and then I got these 2, and then in the middle there's going to be our ceiling fan. But yeah, they light up the place really, really well. I've got a few more over in the other rooms, but that's all I'm going to hang for now until we get our sheetrock up and done, and then I'll put the rest of them in. And right here I just wanted to show you kind of a couple pointers for wiring, I guess. We ran our laser to drill all the holes so we could feed all of our wire in the exact same, or at the exact same height. And then I made note of that, so when I'm hanging drywall or when I'm mounting anything to the wall, I know exactly the height of the wires and I can avoid them. If I need to mount something that needs a longer screw, I don't have to worry about that screw hitting those wires because I know exactly where everything is. Also, you want to make sure that you add these staples outside of your boxes. I want to say it was within 6 inches of the box. Don't quote me on that. And then you want a staple, I believe it's every 4 feet that isn't supported. So if there was a space that was over 4 feet between these studs, you'd have to add a nailer in there just to support that wire. But these holes in the studs basically count as a fastener, so you don't obviously need to put a fastener in between that 14.5-inch space between the stud. And here's an example of that 4-foot measurement here. We just put a block in behind the studs and then added a staple to it. That way that wire is supported every 4 feet or less until it gets to that next box. Also, all of our box heights are the exact same height as well. You can just use hammer height is what a lot of people refer to. And that's just the height of your hammer. That way you don't have to measure every single one. You can just lay your hammer down and measure the height off of that. And I want to say it's about 18 inches to the bottom of the box, roughly in that neighborhood. But whatever height you decide to go with, just keep it consistent throughout. Once you hang your drywall, it'll look a lot nicer and everything will be at the same height and you won't have any ups or downs in your outlet height. And here's our panel. We ran all of our home runs up through the attic per usual, and then we ran them down this sidewall right beside that column. You can see a bunch of foam scattered in there now, and then we cut a hole in this plywood and entered into the panel from there. I do need to clean up all the foam and dust around this box with the vacuum. You don't want any little particles like that, anything that could potentially catch on fire anywhere near your panel. But we have a lot of breakers in this house, so it can be difficult to keep everything nice and neat. It's important that you have every wire labeled. We have them labeled inside the panel. There's a little piece of the sheath that has the term of each home run on it. So like here you can see we left the sheath on, it says dryer and so on, and then we got like the guest bedroom and all that over there. And you also want to, of course, keep note of whatever breaker is used for. And I just picked up these stickers here. Our panel didn't come with these inside of it, but you can go to Home Depot and buy these for a couple bucks. And it's just a sticker you put on the door of your panel. So I just need to transfer all of mine from this piece of cardboard over to here and then stick it on the panel, which I'll do today at some point. Yeah, important you keep this all nice and neat. Otherwise it can be a real disaster for the next guy that has to work on your house, or if you have to go back and do any maintenance on anything. So now that our inspection has come and we've passed, I'm almost ready for sheetrock. And before I go ahead and start hanging sheets on the ceiling, there's a few things I'm going to do as far as layout goes, just so I know where all my outlets are, where to put all my lights. In my opinion, it's way easier to lay out all that on your floor than to do it up on the ceiling when you've already hung sheets and taking measurements off of a ladder or whatever. So I'm going to show you kind of how I'm laying everything out so that I can just throw sheets up on the ceiling, turn my laser on, and then start drilling exactly where I need to for all of my lights, and then the same goes for all of my outlets. So right here I have the mark of where my first row of lights is, and then I just set my laser on that and I line it up with my mark all the way across the other side of the wall, and then I got the same distance from my light box all the way down, and everything is going to be in a perfect line. So what I'm doing is I'm drawing this line onto the floor with marker. If I had another person here, I'd just run a chalk line to be way quicker and easier, but since I don't, I'm just using a marker, and I'm going to draw lines all the way across. Here's one that I did already, and these lines are directly under where every single light is going to be, and I gave myself a couple feet for each one just to have a little bit of wiggle room. Once I have these all finished up, what I'm going to do is bring my laser over and turn on the additional light. So right here I just have one on, and if I turn on the one beside it here, it gives me an X. So I'm going to go along and take measurements every 4 feet and draw that X. And that X is where I'm going to put this laser again after I've hung the sheetrock on the ceiling. I'll put this laser right back onto that X, and it will shine it onto the ceiling, and that's exactly where I'll center my hole saw bit, which is the exact size of the holes I'm cutting my lights. Obviously this one is way off from where it would actually be, but just to give you the example. That way there's no errors for measuring from the wall over when you're up on the ladder and whatnot. Everything's just going to be perfect. And I don't know, you put in a little bit of extra work before you start the drywall, and I feel like overall it's going to save a ton of time once the drywall's up. I'm not going to drill the holes and then lift it up there. I'm just going to lift it up, screw a few in there, and then drill the holes in and finish everything off. Another thing I did is under every single outlet I drew on the concrete exactly where it's at and the height to the center of the outlet. So this one's 20 inches to the center. So that way when I hang my drywall up here, I'll throw a few screws around it, and then I can take my roto zip and put it in at 20, run it over to the edge, and I can cut out these boxes in a matter of seconds, and I'm not fumbling around with the tape measure. So underneath every single outlet, I just went along, marked it on the concrete, and then the height. These are all the same height, of course. So you don't actually have to write 20 inches on all of them if you keep them the same, but I just did it anyways. And then I do the same thing for in the bathroom. I just go down, and these are 46 inches to the center, and then I've got like the overhead lights marked out. So everything's marked on the floor. That way we definitely don't forget anything. Like these overhead lights in here, you could get into a mode and start hanging drywall and then you forget something. So everything's on the concrete so we won't miss any steps there. Same with switches. Here I've got a 4-gang box. I just wrote lines on both edges of where the box sits and then how tall it is to the center. And this will make more sense, I think, once I do this, but basically I'll just run my roto zip into the center of this, go up until I hit the edge, pop it out, and then drop it back in on the outside and then trace all the way around it. And I think in theory it should work out really well. While I'm up here and looking at this switch box, before you hang any sheets, you're going to want to push all these wires back into the box as far as they can go. I'm going to also set the depth on my roto zip to only go into this box about 1/4 inch, so we don't have to worry about nicking any of those wires. We've come this far. You don't want to make a silly mistake like that and have to replace something and tear out your drywall to get it right. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Like I said, I'm not an electrician, but I'm hoping that there's a few of these tips, if you want to call them that, or how I did things that are helpful to you. and maybe you'll see something that makes your job a little bit easier if you decide to do it yourself like we did here. As far as our inspection goes, we did get dinged for two things, and they're actually pretty minor, so I'm really happy with that. The one thing is we ran a little piece of conduit under the concrete to run power from under our sink, under the concrete and up through the island. And I just fed Romex through there, just regular 12 gauge Romex. That wire, even though it's in conduit, they want it to be the UF, or that underground feeder wire, which is not a big deal at all. I actually have some of that on hand. So I just had to pull out that 12 gauge wire and run some new stuff in. That was like a 2-minute fix, so that wasn't an issue at all. So here's what I was talking about. We have this, and you're definitely going to want to run that conduit like we did before you pour the concrete, so you can make changes like this. So right now it's just 12 gauge running into the conduit, and then it comes out over here. But we have to change that to this underground feeder wire, which is going to be really a quick fix, a quick and easy fix, so not a big deal at all. But just don't make the same mistake I did. I thought that since it was in conduit, it would be okay to run just regular old Romex. That's not the case. They still want the UF, or that underground feeder, which has a little bit heavier sheath on it. So we had two corrections. The second one, which makes perfect sense to me, and I wouldn't do anything any different than I did. We just had to add some steel plates right here. Since this isn't a complete 2x4 like you normally would have in normal construction, we just ran it right behind it there, and since it's not the correct depth from the wall, you're at a higher risk of hitting it with the screw. So you just add these little protector plates here, and then when you go to screw in your drywall or whatever else, your screw's going to hit that metal and not go in and harm your wire. One other thing that I would highly suggest that I almost forgot about, we have Dish Network out here, and that's what we want in our new house as well. Call up the Dish people and have them plumb in their coaxial cables for all of the TVs that you're going to have. Luckily, the Dish guy had to come out to our house anyways, and he was able to run this wire before we blew in all that insulation. If you had to do this afterwards, it's just going to be a big mess up in there in the attic. And we were able to get ports here, and then we've got another one that goes into our master bedroom, and then we have a third one out in the garage. But he just stubbed these all through, and they're just kind of hanging loosely right now. I'm going to put them in one of these blue boxes and then sheetrock over them. But now we'll have all these already in place, and we won't have to worry about it down the road. One other thing that you can also do is run in Ethernet cables if you want to hardwire any of your items to the internet. Since our house isn't all that big, I'm pretty confident that we'll have a good Wi-Fi signal throughout. But if you have maybe a 2-story home or something, you might want to run internet to your smart TVs or to your computer room or your office, wherever you use internet frequently. So just a couple things to think about before you start hanging up all that drywall. It's a pain to go back and do it afterwards. So thankfully it was just those two minor fixes that we had to make. Within 20 minutes I had both of those repaired, and now we're good to hang our drywall. I'll just finish doing a few layout things on the floor like I had talked about earlier in this video, and then I'm going to start to assemble the sheetrock jack that I picked up and probably throw up one sheet just to see how everything goes. Thanks a ton for watching, you guys. Things are going to really start to pick up now. Once we get that drywall hung, it's going to start to look like an actual home, and I'm super excited for it. I appreciate everybody that's subscribed to me. We're nearing 500 subscribers, which I think is great. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.